My name is Dr Aaron Yeardley and I shall be presenting today's webinar. So welcome to Tunley Environmental's presentation on the future of corporate sustainability reporting. So I'm sure you're all here today because you already know the importance of sustainability reporting. It is incredibly important, especially as the industries shift. There's more and more expanding compliance. SMEs are facing more and more data requests. Procurement's becoming tighter, and there's also a huge amount of benefits to reporting sustainability. It can provide you a lot of competitive edge. It can avoid stress. Stress what comes from last minute having to report. And it also prevents any lost opportunities. So it is hugely important to report your corporate sustainability. And that is what the focus of this webinar shall be about. It shall be all about the frameworks involved. It shall be about the data requirements and the tools to help report to these frameworks. All in the hope that will help you all build a bit of a timeline for the next 12 to 24 months, giving you a clear, practical sequence of actions to follow straight from this webinar. So, what's been happening in 2025? There's been quite a few key trends to follow. For example, 2025 has been one of the hottest years, so businesses need to ensure that they adapt and plan beyond mitigation. I know a lot of businesses are doing as much as they possibly can to reduce the carbon emissions and try and prevent climate change. However, there's still lots of businesses who aren't. And that means the earth is still heating up and we need to be ready and be prepared. So climate adaptation is becoming just as important as climate mitigation. There are a lot more supply chain regulations, a lot more transparency in the supply chain. So scope 3 is becoming more and more important in terms of emissions, but also in terms of biodiversity. And this brings us on to the nature and biodiversity regulation traction. So COP16, that has pushed a lot more stricter reporting, and it's made it a lot more central so that nature and biodiversity aligns with the climate. And we'll come on to a lot more of this in the future. In addition, greenwashing is also being enforced more than ever. The anti-greenwashing rules and the new ESG ratings regulations, they are becoming more and more tighter, and there will be bigger fines for false claims. Therefore, it's more important than ever to ensure that your environmental reporting is accurate and is aligned with the standards. So, why does sustainability reporting matter so much for SMEs? Mainly because it debunks the myths. So SMEs, what happens is, they get contacted a lot by the customers. They are asked for it a lot in the tenders, and it requires a lot of finances. So the requirements from regulations are becoming stricter and stricter. But this doesn't often touch SMEs directly. What happens is that it falls down from the big customers, and the supply chains also have to report. So the main thing is that regulations are hitting the larger businesses harder and harder. And this is causing issues. This is making lots and lots more companies have to report sustainability. And that's why it matters for SMEs as well as everybody else. This is the current reporting landscape. So as mentioned, we've got the ESRS. These are the 5 main topics. You've got climate change, you've got nature, you've got water and marine, circular economy, and pollution. Not in any particular order. They're your 5 main environmental topics in ESRS. We've also got GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. That's an independent framework. We've got the Sustainability Disclosure Standards. These are issued by ISSB and a focus on sustainability related financial information. We've also got the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. This covers 77 different industries and emphasises on a lot of different ESG factors. And finally, we've got the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Moving on, there have been some major changes that took place in 2025 at different frameworks collectively shaping the reporting expectations and changing how these are. So one really important one is CSRD, and that follows the ESRS reporting standard, which we just discussed. Now in 2025, there were many refinements to CSRD, and this means that the scoping and the clarification of it has changed. And now these disclosures demand high quality auditable data. We also have CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which entered a major review phase. And additionally, we've got changes in SBTI, GHG protocol, and other ISO international standards. So although we can't go through them all in detail now, I just want you all to understand that the reporting frameworks, the standards, the methodologies, and everything followed does constantly get updated. And it is difficult at times to keep up to date with everything going on. But what is important is the reasons for doing it and what sustainability reporting actually is. So if you are reporting your environmental guidelines, your reports, then it's really important to actually do it for the right reasons, to actually go through a certain level of doing it. So at a basic level, reporting usually involves some sort of clear commitment. This needs to be from the ownership team. We also need to ensure that your company has a clear materiality shortlist. So what are the topics that genuinely matter to your company? And then ensure that we're painting an honest picture. What is your current performance? And outline the risks and opportunities. So where can your company move forward to actually make a difference? And share your commitment and your actions. And finally, track all this over time against targets. And that ideally is all what would make your sustainability reporting perfect. So as the methodologies and the standards may be changing in the future, if we stick to these 6 main principles, then at a basic level, your sustainability reporting will do what it needs to do to physically make a real difference to the world. And this all starts from understanding what risks are involved for your company. Many large companies are now required to conduct double materiality assessments. And when you think of a double materiality assessment, you have to understand whether the ESG topics have a financial impact, or whether they have any, or whether the organisation has an impact on people and the environment. So you're looking at both financial materiality and the impact materiality. To do this, many interviews and a lot of research has to be undertaken to really understand where the subtopics lie in this graph. Even smaller organisations can achieve a lot and can start to understand which topics are important to them without having to go to the full process of a double materiality assessment. So my recommendation, if you're beginning this journey and you don't have to do it just for CSRD, but you want to make a difference, you want to report your sustainability, then begin with a materiality assessment. Start by asking a quick stakeholder poll. You ask your customers, your staff, your suppliers, try and get a good percentage of them to answer, and ask them to rate how important they think each of the subtopics are. Once you've done that, we move on to step 2, and we take whatever comes out on top from the survey. For each one, we need to ask some really hard-hitting business questions. Ask yourself, could rise in energy prices kill our margins? Could a customer walk if we don't sort out packaging? Simply write out the answers, plain English, and you've got yourself some financial justification. And then move on to step 3. At this stage, it's time to look in the mirror and actually think, what are the impacts? What impact are you making on these hard-hitting, these impactful, these financial subtopics which are impacting your business, which are material to your business? So you look at your electricity, your gas, anything which starts to create impacts, which you can measure. And then step 4, you draw a simple 3-column table, and you can actually look at the stakeholders' view, the business risk opportunity, and the actual impact. Anything that appears in 2 columns gets on final shortlist, and you can choose 3 to 5 material topics. So you're really starting to understand which subtopics are impacting your business. So from that point, you might want to start building a really effective internal process. Many organisations, probably might not have the internal capacity for tracking and reporting sustainability progress. Therefore, working with experienced third-party consultants is one of the measures that can be taken to address this. It can help, but ultimately, it must always come with some sort of oversight. I always recommend appointing a sustainability lead. So it needs to be driven from the top. You can then set a space to collect the data on some sort of shared drive, and you can define small sets of KPIs. Get a rhythm going, schedule quarterly meetings, make it twice yearly with a leadership team, and check progress. And finally, you might get to a place where you can put together all your commitments, your approach, your plan to showcase your sustainability policy. You may not be in a position yet where you've got physical calculations completed, but you've thought about it, you know which topics are important, you put together a team, you've got policies, and now you can really start to work on it in the future. So your first report will be a short sustainability policy. And here it is in a timeline. So the actual goal is for this ESG team, which you've just put together, to draft the first formal sustainability report. It needs to ensure it's got leadership reviews in it, and leadership approves it. So that means it needs to be signed off. The report needs to be published and shared with key stakeholders. It can add things such as science-based reduction targets in, but these may be stuff what come in the future. Sustainability reporting, once you've got it going, does have many benefits. If you do sustainability reporting properly and you do it right for the right reasons, then it can also majorly improve your business. It can expose inefficiencies. It can support better procurement decisions. Quite often, it actually leads to a much smaller supply chain because you start to focus in and use good suppliers. It can strengthen relationship with customers. If you've already got the data what they need and they're not having to nag at you and you're not having to do things rushed last minute, then it builds on these relationships. And it can also inform strategic planning. So where do you want to spend your money? Where do you want to invest? Where do you want to improve for the future? So what is happening right now and how does your supply chain impact your sustainability reporting? The issue is that regulations are becoming more and more increased. So larger companies are required to report Scope 3 emissions. Larger companies are required to really understand the packaging. Larger companies are having to ensure that so much biodiversity is gained, and many things. This means that it's putting procurement teams under a lot of pressure, and that environmental data is essentially becoming a gatekeeper. Suppliers unable to provide basic sustainability information are increasingly seen as higher risk. And this means that suppliers without that information could soon be dropped. So it's important to do this sort of work for companies to stay competitive. A carbon footprint is the beginning, but essentially a whole policy, a whole sustainability report is what companies need to do. They need to find out what's important and move forward. Plan what they can with their resources and showcase to the clients that it does mean a lot to them. This could be from responding to ESG questionnaires quite consistently and highlighting your improvement and your plans for the future. What opportunities are there from continuous sustainability reporting, from publishing your report every year? Well, the main thing is that it does position yourself stronger in terms of tenders and bids. So quite often now in tenders, in bids, sustainability can be scored just as high as quality and as cost to get you through. It also provides enhanced access to finance and support. So lenders and grant bodies, they can increasingly favour businesses demonstrating that environmental management. It improves employer brand. So clear sustainability commitments can make your organisation more attractive. And this is especially the case for younger talent. I've seen it before. I've seen it reported that more young people now want to work for a company that they are proud of. It also creates long-term resilience. So if you're reporting for sustainability in the future, then you will have identified your risks, your inefficiencies, and the likelihood of shocks from climate change, future changes, supply chain issues, etc., will be negated from your planning. So here we've got a case study. Here we showcase how Ground Control, a UK-based grounds maintenance company, has undertaken a business carbon assessment and really showcase that they are en route to becoming net zero. They published the results from the assessment online, all on the website. You can see that they are saving carbon and then are on track to become net zero by 2030. So overall, this looks really good. It's all accessible for the public online, and it tracks Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3 emissions. It's reporting that looks good. We've also got another case here from CRL, where they've completed a net zero assessment and a roadmap to net zero carbon. Many of these, they have very common features. So they have clear explanations of scope and methods. Another common feature is concise data tables and charts. Along with them, you have your baseline. And what people want to know is, what are you doing to make a difference? So you need realistic, time-bound targets. Another good thing to include in reporting is the challenges and limitations. And finally, back it all up through evidence. Another really important thing when it comes to sustainability reporting is to really avoid greenwashing. Highly, highly recommend it. The fines come into play now. It's just far too important. You want to build trust and increase your reporting by avoiding scrutiny and avoiding any environmental claims. Communicate very carefully, precisely, and honestly. We actually have a Greens Claim Code guide. You can download that straight after the webinar from the Tunley Environmental website. Why might a company want auditing? Auditing can prevent them greenwashing claims. It can prevent greenwashing fines, straight dead, because you are being audited. Everything's been checked. So, for example, many different reporting guidelines are actually requiring audits and verification now. For example, the SB 253 in California, the new Senate bill, both Scope 1 and Scope 2 need to have verification. Verification comes in 3 different topics, I guess, if you want to call it that, 3 different challenges. So you can be limited assurance. Your verification can be checked in a limited manner. This is the minimum needed for SB 253 for Scope 1 and Scope 2. Whereas reasonable assurance is a gold standard. That is like a full assessed audit. They will go right into the systems, they'll check your accounts, they'll check where everything comes from. If you're saying that you're using so much diesel and you're getting it out of the pump, they'll want some sort of test to show that that pump is measuring that diesel accurately. Reasonable assurance is the tightest sort of verification. And you can get all this done by a UCAS accredited certification, if you so want to, someone like BSI. And this provides independent verification that your calculations and your data and everything has been conducted under an ISO standard. So ISO 14064, something like that. So that is your UCAS approved body. ESG reporting itself is broadening. It is beyond just carbon now. And this is why I think it's so important to actually understand which ESG topics are important for your company. So you've got different broadening categories. For example, environment in the environmental pillar from ESG. Scope 3 emissions are more important than ever. The nature, biodiversity is more important than ever. And packaging materials due to EPR laws, extended packaging regulations. In terms of social, you've got social value. People are putting a monetary value on the social impacts that you have. You've also got governance and greenwashing, etc., all becoming more and more important. We also need to factor in climate and nature. So one major shift in 2025 is recognising that climate and nature are inseparable. As climate increases, biodiversity loss speeds up. Ecosystems begin to face huge pressure, and businesses must grasp how environmental changes hit their company. So there's no more treating just climate. Biodiversity is becoming more and more important, and it's no longer a siloed reporting for just carbon. Your sustainability reporting now links climate, nature, water, social, supply chain. We're having things such as the Task Force on Nature-related Financial Disclosure. This emerging framework is really driving it. Sectors for finance, energy, infrastructure, these are all adopting TNFD-aligned assessments. We've also got science-based targets for nature. These set measurable goals to halt biodiversity decline and really make a difference. And finally, we've got the ISO 17298, which were launched in October 2025. This gives a framework to assess how activities interact with biodiversity, prioritise actions at sites and in supply chains. So overall, it's becoming more and more important. Integration between climate and biodiversity matters. More onto the integration, climate and nature, and how these risks impact business risks. Essentially, SMEs can feel the risk much harder because they have fewer buffers against the shocks, so you can consider the different risk types. These include physical risks, sites and operations from flooding, storms, heat waves. They can all damage your facilities, disrupt operations, and reduce workforce productivity. You've also got risk to your supply chain. Droughts, biodiversity, etc. They can all affect the availability and, more importantly, the price of the raw materials. Policies and regulatory risks, very important. Again, can all be impacted from climate and nature. And finally, reputation and market risks. Customers and partners prefer to use suppliers that recognise and manage environmental risks. Practical responses which you can implement, which include climate and nature in your business planning. This might mean you map your key dependencies, identify where your operations rely heavily, and start with some simple metrics. Track the incidents, disruptions, the cost, that sort of thing, and it will start to build a much bigger picture over time. Overall, it all builds resilience. Emerging opportunities for 2026, what's coming? AI is helping, I'm sure you're all aware. AI does get a bit of a bad reputation when it comes to the environment, but everything has an impact. The question is can it help more than the impact it cuts? I certainly believe that AI can. AI has got an important role. Stronger reporting wins more tenders. It can also, if you start to implement circularity and resource efficiency, can reduce costs. And nature positive strategies attract new finances. Looking beyond 2026, probably have more and more regulations. Wave 2 of CSRD will start. More big customers start asking for more. We've got to be ready in terms of scope 3 in the supply chain. We've got to be ready with nature, circularity, packaging, as the packaging regulations tighten. It is really important that customers start to raise the bar. Why and what can you do to help this? One of the things I would recommend is to work with a consultant. There'll be points when bringing in external support adds real value, it reduces risk, especially as expectations grow. When customers' demands become complex or frequent, a consultant can really help keep them customers happy. And when you're producing your formal report, external support can really ensure your methods are robust and your communication is clear and credible. They can check everything for you. Internal capacity could be limited. You don't need to just employ somebody new for a full year to do this. You can get help for a lot cheaper than a new salary. And consultants have that knowledge. They can align your work with specific frameworks. They understand CSRD, ISO standards, the different frameworks, SDGs, everything you need to ensure that everything's covered. And you don't have to worry about greenwashing. A consultancy knows what we're on about. They know the work and they can ensure it's all done accurately. You'll be able to see more of this in Tunley Environmental Sustainability Report. It will be available online very soon, and we'll notify all webinar attendees when it's ready. That is Tunley Environmental Sustainability Report. So, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all enjoyed the webinar. Hope it's helped.